Hey everybody, welcome to Active Self-Protection Extra. On John's briefs today, I have one that I'm making this video so that I can list it and link it in the comments for people when I see this comment that shows up occasionally. When we talk about using deadly force to protect property, I see this comment that happens that is absolutely a popular belief. Well, you know, John, they used to hang horse thieves. Did they?
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below.
Don't worry, Tim will be back soon. It's been a busy month and I got to get some time to film with him, okay? So he'll be back, I promise you. I've not gotten rid of Tim. I hear this all the time. I hear this thing that, when I say, hey man, if somebody is just taking property, that is not justification for the use of deadly force. The two things that I hear about this all the time are either number one, they used to hang horse thieves. We'll talk about that one today. And also number two, in Texas, they can. We're going to talk about that as well today. And I'm going to put some links here in the description for you to be able to look up some of this. And so I'm going to put on ye olde glasses because I'm almost 50 years old and the old age bus gets us all. And I can read better when I have my glasses on. It just less eye strain. So here's the thing. When people say, well, John, people used to hang horse thieves. We used to hang horse thieves. Not legally. Vigilantes murdered people without due process, but I cannot find a single instance of a legally, duly, constituted court in the United States of America who hung a horse thief. Ever. Now you might say, but wait a minute, I know of a Texas Ranger who did it. Are you telling me that at times the Texas Rangers operated judicially, extra outside of the bounds of law? Shocking, right? Especially when it was one ranger, one riot. Are you telling me they did stuff in order to keep the peace that wasn't actually a peacekeeping function? I'd be shocked to hear that, okay? Now, don't just take my word for it, right? The first place that I would go to, I'm going to post you a link. This is in truewestmagazine.com, and it's an interview with Marshall Trimble. Marshall Trimble is the state historian for the state of Arizona. That's the fine state that I live in. We are the Old West yet. I mean, goodness sakes, man, you go outside of Phoenix, right? You get outside of Phoenix, you get up north a little ways into Prescott, into Payson, and you'll find legit cowboys up in them parts of the world. And here's what Marshall kind of has to say about things. He says, I parlayed with friends Leon Metz, Joe Rosa, Jim Dunham, and Bill O'Neill to get their opinions. We all agree that despite the legendary myth about horse theft being a hanging offense in the West, we can't recall an instance of a horse thief being hanged by a legal court. There were a lot of lynchings for horse thievery by vigilantes, but legal executions for the offense were about as scarce as horse flies in December. So yes, vigilantes did it according to the state historian of Arizona, but not actual legal courts. Now you might go, yay, that's great. Those vigilantes took the law into their own hands. But let's think about the moral standard that you just set there. You basically said, well, heck, as long as I agree with the law here, then people should take the law into their own hands. And I don't mind actually killing people extrajudiciously. I just mind it if they're not people I agree with. I just mind it. I do mind it if they are people I agree with politically and not the others. And of course, in light of recent political assassinations, that's kind of, you're adopting the same moral standard as those you hate. And friends, I can't tell you enough, from an ethical perspective, never become those you hate, right? That when we say, wait a minute, the taking of human life is serious. And in order to do so, we want to do so, we only want the state to do so in light of a huge, beyond a reasonable doubt standard. And so, well, wait a minute, we know that was wrong and it should be a punishable offense by death. Now we always say that if you are faced with an imminent threat of death or great bodily injury, that you can stop that. And you have the right to stop that, but we use deadly force for protection, not for punishment. You're talking about using it as punishment. And lynching is just punishment. And quite frankly, friends, we used to lynch men for being black. And that's morally repugnant too, right? I also want to note here where we actually saw some legal hangings for horse theft, okay? Where we actually saw some legal hangings for horse theft from about the 1680s into maybe as late as 1810, 1820, we saw them in England. In particular, I've put a link in the description to an article that says on this date, and it's June 7th, 1811, at Ayr, said George Winston paid with his neck for abusing the hospitality of such an implacable victim. He was the last man executed for horse theft in Scotland. So the last man executed for horse theft in Scotland, it was done in 1811. So now let's hold on a minute and let's think about the fact that in England, this kind of stuff went on, but it went on as part of what they called the Bloody Codes. And the Bloody Codes are really a part of English law that I want to kind of talk about a little bit here. And before we talk about American law, okay? So here's the thing. I've put a link in the description to the Bloody Codes, right? So this was 1689, this started. There were about 50 offenses that were listed as punishable by death in England and Wales. But by 1776, that list had grown to 200 offenses that were punishable by death. And it's kind of funny that 1776 became a time when England was cracking down with incredibly, difficult and very draconian laws, punishing people to death for offenses that were minor offenses. And as part of that, there might have been some important historical events occurring right around that time. And the Bloody Codes were part of a repressive government regime that was keeping people down in class warfare. And then some folks in their colonies didn't like that very much. And so those times go hand in hand, friend. We don't want to put those two together. So I want to note that, right? I want to note the fact that when we saw these things happening, that actually in reality, that was happening in a place and in a time in England and in Wales and in Scotland, that we said this form of government is evil and we're going to rebel against it. And that's the founding fathers' principle that due process is so important that we will sever ties over it, okay? Now, I want to note here, I've got a screenshot for you and then a link in the description, that Leon Redzinowitz listed 49 pages of capital statutes of the 18th century divided into 21 categories. So these are categories, okay? That these are all categories of capital offenses during this time. High treason, including offenses against the Protestant secession and the Protestant establishment. So if you were Catholic or if you were not of the appropriate Protestant establishment, that was a capital offense. I wonder what the Bill of Rights has to say about that. Number two, other offenses against the state were capital offenses. So if you did something against the state, capital offense. Offenses against public order, including riot and destruction of flood defenses and bridges. Interesting. Offenses against the administration of justice. So if you interfered with the cops, capital offense. Offenses against public health. Let's put that in a modern context here in this time. If you refused to follow the Crown's requirements for public health, you would be not shot, but hanged or beheaded. Imagine in a modern context if you refused a vaccination and were executed for it. That's what we're agreeing to here in this particular case. Offenses against public revenue. So if you cheated on your taxes, including smuggling, petty treason. I'm not sure what petty treason is. I didn't click through that. And murder. Okay. Stabbing, maiming, and shooting any person. Capital. Rape, forcible abduction, and other sexual offenses. I'm still okay in those. Simple grand larceny. This one's going to be important in a minute. and allied offenses. Now, I want to note that the grand larceny that got here, then this is the one that we're talking about, number 10, when we're talking about horse thieves, right? Horse theft, is the bar for that was lowered all the way down to 12 pence. And down to 12 pence around this time we're talking about a modern equivalent of probably anywhere from 50 to $100. So this is just class warfare is what that is. I mean, basically, let's think about this. How many times have you gone to dinner lately and you got like fast food for the family and it was more than $50? You're now guilty. And if you stole that instead, you forgot to pay for it and you walked out the door, grand larceny. And that's a capital offense. Wow. Burglary and allied offenses, larceny from the person, so pickpocketing, larceny and embezzlement by servants, so only by servants, mind you, not by the landed gentry, post office employees, clerks, and other agents, so embezzlement, capital offense, blackmail, capital offense, offenses by bankrupts. So if you had to declare bankruptcy, capital offense, forgery of deeds, bonds, testaments, bills of exchange, stocks, stamps, banknotes, etc. So if you kited a check, death. Very well, give him death. Ooh, if you get that reference. Falsely personating another with intent to defraud. So hiding your, playing along with somebody and hiding who you were to, drop some lols on a texter. Nope, punishable by death. Destroying ships to the prejudice of insurance companies. So insurance fraud, capital offense. Coinage offenses. This whole, man, if you, you kite a counterfeit $20 bill, capital offense. Malicious injuries to property, including arson. Okay, we're interested in that. And then piracy, yar. So these were, again, the categories of offenses in England in 1776 that were capital offenses. And these were the very things that if you go read the Declaration of Independence, our founding fathers were absolutely against. They said, no, this is not it. Now, here's the interesting bit. There's a couple of other interesting things on this that I kind of want to note that when you go look at the Bloody Code, it's kind of interesting. In that after this, the Rabinowitz here, what they say here, if you go read the Wikipedia article, it's actually a pretty good article and it's well documented, is that even though they had all these, they actually didn't enforce them all that commonly. And because the people kind of rebelled against it and were like, oh man, this is just too draconian even for us. And this is where something like Australia came to be. So instead they just banish them to Australia and say, man, you got to go live with kangaroos and lots of things that want to kill you instead, that we'll banish you to another place rather than kill you, because even to them, a capital offense, even under these crazy bloody codes, was too much. That's worth thinking about, friends. So even in history, A, we can't find it in the United States. It did not happen in the United States. B, it did happen some in England, in Wales, in Scotland, in Ireland, but actually relatively rarely, and was part of an incredibly repressive code of laws that was so immoral, we actually we severed ties with England over this kind of offense. Not joking here, okay? Now, I will say in the United States, I think there's a couple good things in, if you go read the horse thievery article on Wikipedia, some good stuff there talking about a couple of organizations. Number one, if you look at it, in Pennsylvania in 1780, there was an act to increase the punishments of horse stealing. And that law was passed in 1780, repealed in 1860, which stated people guilty of such a crime could be branded. And so the law ran as follows. The first offense, the convicted shall stand in the pillory for 1 hour and shall be publicly whipped on his, her, or their bare backs with 39 lashes well laid on. At the same time shall have his, her, or their ears cut off and nailed to the pillory, and for the second offense shall be whipped and pilloried in a like manner and be branded on the forehead in a plain and visible manner with the letters H.T. So, wow, I mean, a very serious punishment, that they would get in the pillory for an hour, lashed with 39 lashes, have their ears cut off and nailed to the pillory. And then on the second one, branded horse thief across them. That's very serious stuff. I mean, that's causing grievous bodily injury, but it's not death. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't any anti-horse thieving folks about. There's actually a couple of a group called the Anti-Horse Thieving Association, Anti-Horse Thief Association, that was started in 1854 in Missouri and grew to about 40,000 people in it. And if you look, there's a screenshot I've got for you that between 1899 and 1909, members of the Oklahoma branch recovered about $83,000 worth of livestock, saw the conviction of over 250 thieves. That's amazing. And men suspected of being thieves would be pursued by members of the organization. Now, here's an interesting bit, and often hanged without trial. So again, these are lynchings. These are not legally recognized courts. So these are basically, we are a law unto ourselves. These are the functional equivalent of the Portland, the zone with no government, the CHOP or Chaz in Seattle. That's what these guys did. And I know in using those phrases that my right-leaning friends that are watching this are going to just absolutely say, it's not the same thing at all, John. It is. It's them saying we are the law and we will not, bow to anybody's pressure, and we will be a law unto ourselves, and you have no business here, and we don't care about your duly established courts or your rule of law. We are the law here. And that's exactly what they were. Okay, fine. So lynchings, yeah, that's okay, but not these others. So here's an overall thing. We don't see any duly appointed courts hanging or otherwise executing horse thieves. That's not to say that horse thievery was okay. And that's not to say that there's any, it's either we hang them or we let them go. There's middle grounds here, right? There was serious punishment, sometimes even crazy, way too serious. And there could be an argument. Okay, so if we say in the ye olde west times, you could say, well, if I'm out on the range all by myself and somebody steals my horse and I'm 150 miles from civilization, well, I don't have enough food and water to last that long and I'll die out there. So it's a death sentence. So stealing my horse is death. And those kinds of edge cases, maybe you could defend actually killing somebody for stealing your horse, because again, the death sentence on you could be there, but that's not how the vast majority of these went. They're horses that are pastured. They're horses that are owned by somebody, but are, being grazed in an area, not that are, it's a cowboy out on his own in the wild or something like that. Those are very, very rare. And those kinds of extenuating circumstances could happen. And also, again, punishments abounded. When these people were caught, it's a felony level offense. It's like stealing a car today. Grand theft auto is a felony level offense. And we can make an argument and say, hey, wait a minute, John, I think our society is too lenient on car thieves and we should have stricter penalties for car theft. And because they're getting out too soon, it's seen as just a pure property crime, but it's depriving people of their livelihoods. And I think you could make an argument for that. But again, we're not talking about that here. We're talking about, well, somebody is jumped in my car with nobody else in it and hasn't threatened force to anybody and hotwired my car and is driving off, and I should be able to kill them to stop that. That's where we see it all the time, because horse thieves used to be hung. That's just a myth, guys. It doesn't purport with anything in American jurisprudence at any time in America, period and full stop. Where we did see it was in Britain, in England, Wales, and Scotland and Ireland, under the bloody codes, which we literally rebelled against. We literally severed ties with them as a nation and under that kind of a regime. It got so bad that it came to a height in 1776, for God's sake. Now, I know somebody's going to argue with me as well about Texas, right? Somebody's going to say, well, John, in Texas, you can kill somebody for stealing your property and we're okay with it. Are you, though? I think that it's a lot more of a thin slice than people give it credit for. So let's look at what it says. It's actually Texas Penal Code 9.42 that people are pointing to. And I get this all the time. And Texas has got a couple of bits on the law books here that are unique. I'm going to tell you that it is a unique leniency in the use of deadly force. If you go to Texas Penal Code 9.32, the use of deadly force, there is within there the justification, it is justified in Texas to use deadly force to stop a robbery and an armed robbery. So an armed robbery or an aggravated robbery, but also just a robbery, which is a threatening of force, of ordinary force in the taking of property. So if you threaten somebody with force while taking their property, Texas says you can stop that crime, not a deadly threat to your person, but just a threat to your person involving the taking of your property with deadly force. And that is a unique statute. But let's look at Texas Penal Code 9.42 together. And I've gone to the Texas legislature's website in order to get this. And so I'm going to read it to you because if you think this is written in English, you're a fool. I've said this a million times. Laws are written in lawyer, not in English. And I get to testify in court about this stuff all the time. And I get to write reports about this stuff all the time. And we get to talk about it with lawyers all the time. I've got 3 cases on my docket right now that I am working. I got one that's probably going to trial in October. I got a couple more that we're not at that point yet to know when the trial is going to be. So let's read, okay? And let me help you a little bit here. Section 9.42 is titled Deadly Force to Protect Property. I'm going to show it to you on screen. A person is justified in using deadly force against another to protect land or tangible, movable property. So tangible, movable property. And so the rest of these are becoming the criterion of that. So now we have criteria. Number 1, if it would be justified in using force against another under section 9.41. So there's a whole separate section, 9.41, on the use of ordinary force. And there's plenty of places that you can use ordinary force to protect property. There's a lot of leeway for people to use non-deadly force, not force which is likely to cause death or great bodily injury, but force. Okay, so remember, there's more than a gun and nothing, right? And so he would be justified in using force against the other under 941, and 2, when and to the degree he reasonably believes the deadly force is immediately necessary, Let's parse some words here. When and to the degree. So he can use deadly force when, and he can use as much deadly force as he reasonably believes. Who gets to decide reasonable? You don't. The jury does. Okay. And what is a jury going to decide is reasonable? I'm telling you, you don't get to decide what is reasonable. The jury does. And some juries will disagree with how much you think is reasonable. And if you have to believe not that just the deadly force is okay, but is immediately necessary. Okay, those are important words. So necessary says not only is it acceptable, but if I didn't, then it was completely unacceptable. So it was necessary to use deadly force, not just possible, necessary, and not just necessary, immediately necessary. And in this case, 2A, prevent the other's imminent commission of arson, burglary, robbery, aggravated robbery, theft during the nighttime, or criminal mischief during the nighttime. So, okay. So imminent commission of several crimes. Arson, we assume that the structure, arson is of an occupied structure, and therefore we assume that there's a threat to life in there. Burglary, that's interesting, breaking into an occupied dwelling. Robbery, that's that interesting one I told you about earlier. Aggravated robbery is doing that with a weapon. Theft during the nighttime is an important one because A, it's during the nighttime. Can you define to me when nighttime is? Or criminal mischief during the nighttime. Or B, to prevent the other who is fleeing immediately after committing burglary, robbery, aggravated robbery, or theft during the nighttime from escaping with the property, comma. So if we say, so obviously you wouldn't escape from arson with the property. So if it's got a property-related crime, that's why burglary, robbery, aggravated robbery, or theft are included there. So they grabbed some property during the nighttime. Theft during the nighttime is the one we're really worried about here. And escaping with the property. And number 3, he reasonably believes that. Reasonably? Who defines reasonably again? The jury does. A, the land or property cannot be protected or recovered by any other means. Any other means. So now wait a minute. Now, what other means might you recover your property with? Well, friend, was your property insured? And it should be insured. Well, yeah, my truck is insured. Then you can just recover your truck with insurance. Yeah, but it would cost me $500 in my insurance claim. It's going to cost you a heck of a lot more than that. if you shoot somebody in your truck. Just to clean your truck up is going to cost you more than $500, let alone the rest of it. But you could recover that property by another means. It cannot be protected or recovered by any other means. So again, is there any other way you could have done this? Is there anything you could have done? And if you reasonably believe there's no other possible way that you could have recovered that property, well, no. I mean, you couldn't run after him. You couldn't stop him. You couldn't follow him in your car, call the police, and let the police handle it. It's pretty serious. Or here's B as well. B, the use of force other than deadly force to protect or recover your land or property would expose the actor or another to a substantial risk of death or serious bodily injury. So if in the recovery of your property, or if you are thinking, hey, I'm going to stop this guy from robbing me, and then all of a sudden you recognize, wow, if I try to grab a hold of this guy or do something else, or I follow him in the car, that is going to expose me to a substantial risk of death or great bodily injury because he's got a gun or he's threatening me with a gun. Now we're talking about you have a substantial risk of death or great bodily injury, and that goes back to our normal justification for the use of deadly force. So how wide is this door open in Texas to using deadly force to protect property? It's so narrow. It's ridiculously narrow. So it is theft during the nighttime, but only, yes, there is a provision in 9.42. Only if they are doing that in that moment or immediately fleeing from it, and the jury decides that it was reasonable that you believed that you could not have protected it by any other means. Any at all. You had no insurance on it. You had no other means of getting another. So it's inestimable value because it is a one of a kind. You've got the Mona Lisa that they're running off with. And of course it can't ever be replaced because it's a literal one of a kind. And it's of incredible historical value, or it would cause you to have a substantial risk of death or great bodily injury if you used force other than deadly force to stop the flight or the crime. In which case you're faced an immediate threat of death or great bodily injury, and so therefore it's justified. So even in Texas here, you're talking about thin slicing the thinnest of slices to justify the use of deadly force to protect property, which is incredibly rare. And I wouldn't want to be the one who is making that defense in front of a jury because you're going to have big problems, friends. That's going to be that thin a slice. If you're that unicorn, okay, fine. I guarantee it's going to cost you more than the insurance claim on the property that you're losing. And you might say, well, John, it's the principle of the thing. All right. If you want to spend your entire retirement on the principle of the thing that nobody's going to learn the principle anyways, and you just want to be broke and work at Walmart till you die, okay. I mean, then you do that thing. So here's the big deal. No, we didn't hang or execute horse thieves in America, not legally. Vigilantes did that some, but vigilantes have done a lot of crap that was absolutely abhorrent in America, and we don't operate that way on purpose. And again, adopting the moral code of somebody because, well, we like this thing, when you'd say, wait a minute, hold on a second. We don't want vigilante mobs who are, hanging people for things that I'm cool with. Right? We just want vigilante mobs for hanging people for cool things I'm not cool with. No, we say we don't want any vigilante mobs. We want the rule of law. We want to recognize that we all get together and we say, wait a minute, we agree in advance on what the laws are and how we use force as a society and when we don't use force as a society. And we recognize that we do not use deadly force for anything but the protection of life, because otherwise we put ourselves at significant risk, even in Texas, because of how narrow the exemption is there. No, they did not hang horse thieves legally at any time in America, and I hope that helps you to understand the issues better and have a great day.